And it says we're on. Welcome back to the Fireplace. And this week we have a bunch of really juicy conversations for you. Now I know there was a small topic that Alchem and Josh wanted to bring up, or was there?
Yeah, there was one about the It was the voice actor, dear old Vic. And okay, so
Okay.
this topic is just one of many where we have the SJW, as they've been titled nowadays, going over and making these daring assumptions. Because now, just for a little bit of background information, for those of you guys who aren't too aware of what I'm speaking of here, there's a guy, and I'm gonna butcher his last name, but you'll get what I'm talking about. A guy named Vic Moniaga, I believe. Yeah, he was a voice actor, very famous one for a lot of anime. And what happened is there was a picture of him just hugging this girl. That is literally the picture that sparked a lot of debate about, oh, this is pedophilic. Oh,
Oh
this is
my
not right.
god.
Yes, it was literally this picture. Now, as a result, Moniak is having to face a lot of a downward spiral in his career. A lot of these, anime events have been canceling him. He's no longer partnered with big time anime streams like Funimation.
Oh my god.
And and so his career is essentially destroyed at this point, irrevocably so. However,
He was hugging a fan.
he was hugging a fan. And now here's the thing. No, they say they love to use the word after some research.
Oh
They
my
did
god.
not do their research. The research shows
Okay, the
that
words
there was
after
nothing.
some research is like when a media pundit says, their critics say, it's basically their excuse of getting around the libel laws.
Right,
Basically,
right,
basically.
right. Because then another one they like to use, I think Funimation used it specifically, is after looking into the matter. And
Another
so,
way they get around libel.
right. So after looking into the matter as a citizen and as most of us who literally want to research, there was nothing going on here. As a matter of fact, a few days after this scandal, this quote unquote scandal came to light, the girl who was in the photo literally came out and said, "Look, guys, this is not what you think it is. There was nothing wrong here. There's nothing out of place here. Vic is an amazing guy. He doesn't deserve this. Stay strong, Vic." If that there isn't just the quintessential evidence of this was entirely innocent and there's nothing to find at fault here, then I don't know. I feel that we're all just to be arbitrarily axed by the SJW.
It's crazy because like all this time, we've been seeing the Me Too movement and everything gain traction. We saw um we saw the situation with Kavanaugh spiral out of control. Everybody was talking about, well, we have a victim and she's accusing him, so immediately he should be, seen as guilty and all that. And then we have, all these women who we're supposed to be listening to who say things in defense of people like him or in similar situations where you're basically guilty by accusation, and no one ever wants to listen to them. It's like you can't say this is about, protecting women and protecting children and everything when you're so obviously not listening to the people who are actually involved in these situations. I just don't understand that line of logic. It's so weird.
Yeah, no, that's just. I did not even know that that was happening, but the fact that someone is losing their jobs despite the fact that the alleged victim is pushing back is. I mean,
Exactly.
it's
Like if you're
baffling.
gonna listen to anyone, it should be the person who's literally in the picture inspiring this whole controversy, and no one's listening to her. And it's like, dude, like my thing is, obviously the media has never really cared about women, and all this stuff is just because, I mean, all this stuff is gaining not popularity, but gaining traction and everything in the media. The only reason that's happening is because people want to make eat. Sorry, I'm feeding my dogs. Come here, child. Eat your food. Oh my god.
It's
Anyway,
it's interesting. It's interesting. Just to interject a quick point here, Jayford. I do have suspicions, although I don't know why Vic would have been a part of this, that a lot of these careers that are getting destroyed, it's almost as if it seems random at first glance, but when you really look into it, there's a potential that all of this hate that the SJW throw towards these particular careers, and it is such an effective tool for absolutely and irrevocably destroying a person's job, a person's lifestyle.
It
And
is.
I would have to wonder if there's some intention behind that. If there's some sort of plan or some sort of concerted effort to have the media, which, by the way, is about, if I remember correctly, about 84 to 86% of media and news anchors are actually privately owned at this point. What if there was a higher power in place here? What if they're saying these people are not being subservient? These people are not advantageous anymore. It is most suitable for us to axe them at this point. Although again, I don't know why Vic would have been part of that. Vic doesn't seem big enough for such things, and yet here we are.
Put the tinfoil hat away. It is not a cute accessory.
It is not a
Who
cute
bans?
accessory. Hey, but you want to know something? It doesn't have to be cute to be effective.
You know,
You know, you got
that's
me
pretty
there.
true.
You got me
He
there.
got you there. He gotcha. You know, you just
Uh,
Anyway, sorry for interjecting there, Jafer. As you were saying.
no. You're completely on track, dude. For like, it's crazy because like everything people say these days, it's almost like you can't really trust them because it's not really them at this point.
yeah.
Even if they have their own shows, like if they're on a network, then it's gonna be pretty hard to differentiate between their opinions and the network's opinions because was it Katie Hopkins? I think she was on air with some BBC anchor, and she was just like, "Well, the BBC made it pretty clear that da 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 da," and he was like, "I didn't know that 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 the BBC had made a public statement or whatever," and she was like, "You made it pretty apparent," or something along those lines. I'm not quoting it directly because I saw it like a while ago, but it's just like it's not that hard. Like if you're on the outside and you're actually thinking about what people are saying, it's not that hard to recognize that people don't really go with their own opinions these days, even if they are public figures and they have their own their own platform where they get to be quote unquote independent with their opinions. Because a lot of the time in any situation like this, like especially like in Silicon Valley where everybody owns tech companies, like basically in the same neighborhood, like everybody's pretty much politically and ideologically homogenous. It's not that hard to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's always the idea of bandwagon effect at this point.
Oh
One
yeah, that too, of course. It's always
and
been a thing, but it's even worse now that politics are so thoroughly, feathered into people's daily lives and their opinions.
right, right, and just with the idea of with just the idea of people trying to go after these notions that they have and say, oh, it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong. Here's evidence. I was reading a book last night, and now this was by an author named David Lay, very
What you
reputable,
read?
right? Oh, of course. I mean, it's probably one of the most secure ways to accrue knowledge, if I'm being completely honest here. But I was reading it, and he mentioned the fact that people oftentimes try to bring in the world of science and logic into subjective arguments. More, in other words, arguments of morality. And these are different spheres of operation. You
Oh,
Yeah.
cannot you cannot bring in something that is inherently illogical and then just try to explain it with logic. It does not work that way. The fact of the matter is that it only sows confusion in your argument. For
exactly.
instance, when we're looking at this here, they try to bring in the objective idea of, oh, well, she's not supposed to be there, or oh, he's not supposed to be there. And how about this? There's age, right? And then there's and then there you go. There's no more real
Exactly.
scientific
Like
evidence.
everybody tries to provide context and make everything like some hard fact based argument, and it's just like that's not how people act. That's not how people interact. And
It
it's
really
like
isn't, but
it's like if you really understood the situation and really wanted to help her out in whatever was happening in that situation, you would actually, pay attention to what the situation was surrounding that. Like, was she an art student? Was she inspired by his work? Was she appreciative of, the impact that he could have had on her childhood? Like, there's so many different like factors happening, and you can't just say, well, I'm going to look at it as one piece of evidence equals the entire story, because that's life isn't a math equation. You can't just do that. And as soon as you try to do that and try to make it this like news piece or whatever, then a bunch of stuff happens that has no grounding in reality, because from the get-go it wasn't something that should just be straight up, what's happening, because like
Right, right.
that's not how that situation would work at all. I don't know. I'm being kind of vague with like the way I'm trying to say it, but you guys know what I'm trying to say, right?
Right, right. And me and you, particularly, me and Ahmed, we had a conversation maybe like a week or two ago, and this idea is starting to rear its ugly head again, which is that when it comes to the public as a whole, we are cognitively simplistic. Those
Very.
and that means to say that we do not perceive other possibilities. We do not try to look into what could be, or how else can a scenario play out, or why a context is the way it is. Rather, we simply digest the information that is given to us in the most forward way possible. In most cases, in fact, under a sort of context that is given to us distinctly by the media, rather than the facts, we are also given a scenario with it. We're given a sort of a story, if you will. And
Yeah.
as a
No, I
result,
feel you.
and as a result, we are not at the root of the problem anymore. Rather, we have been sent careening towards this branch, this wayward branch, this very, very
Something's going on with
oftentimes.
your signal.
Yeah, and it's sad. It's quite disappointing. However, at the same time, this also gives way to the potential solution to this overarching problem, which is that people need to figure out a way to develop their own opinions. If society as a whole is this cognitively simplistic force, then we need to become cognitively complex as individuals and
Yeah.
intentionally try to extricate ourselves from society. Now,
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
well,
I
hold on.
was
Yeah, this
literally, not to cut you off or anything. Please hold that thought though. I was talking to my friend the other day, and I sent her some link, um, about, I think, a bunch of like black conservative people making their points and everything. And she told me that quote unquote, she said, you need to stop watching stuff about Trump on Fox of all places. And I was just like, what? Like, how do you find it okay to just tell somebody like not to watch a news outlet? And it's just like she immediately after too, she was just like, I don't respect Fox. I like CNN. Da 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 da. And it was just like, if you were actually paying attention to what was happening around us, and you understood the way that the media works and the way that people really need to understand how to
well,
come to their own conclusions about everything. You don't just watch, especially CNN. You don't just watch CNN and go, "I trust them. I'm going to listen to what they have to say." Da 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 da. Like,
well,
you need
anyone
to.
who pays attention, anyone who's paying attention knows that like of all the news networks to trust, CNN and Fox News are the two ones that are basically propaganda outlets for their
Exactly.
respective
I'm just
parties.
like, I'm not watching Fox because I like trust everything that they have to say. First of all. Second of all, I wasn't even showing her anything by Fox when I sent her that video. It was she just decided, it had a title and she can immediately react based on what the title was. And I was just like, I'm not watching any one news source. I watch various different outlets of news, of what's happening in current events, and then I use whatever articles I can find to trace them back to whatever, if any, uh, articles of fact there are that they use to cite details for whatever arguments that they're trying to make, and then I base my own opinions on what hardcore evidence and information that I can find on my own time. It's like you should never just go to any one or two news outlets and say, oh well, this is what's happening, and that's I came to my own opinion on it because I listened to the outlet that I find trustworthy. It's just like you have to comb through information yourself and come to your own understanding if you want to have any credible understanding of the world around you, because that's just how humans work in general. Like, you need to come to your own conclusion about life. Like, you can't just listen to any one or two people and just decide, that's hardcore fact, because it's never going to be like that no matter what outlet you're going to, especially not Fox or CNN.
Exactly.
Right.
Because
And
the
there's
idea that I find that a lot of people don't understand that I talk to is no matter what news outlet you're going with, no matter who's reporting it, they're going to put some amount of their opinion in it, even subconsciously.
Yeah.
And that relates back to just a fundamental problem that people have is sloth. We are fairly lazy. We do not search for research, rather, we want to be fed to us. We do not want to be different from other people. We want to be a part of because that's easiest. Very much a go to the path of least resistance, mind you.
It's not even
And
about least resistance at times too. Like, a lot of people enjoy having some kind of, synonymous understanding of the world around them with their immediate friend group and stuff. Like in general, you want to be uh a person that will have reliable approval from the people that you care about. And that's just in human nature, but it's hard to go against that, especially when it comes to politics and stuff, because that's in our lives a lot.
right, and it's funny because society is such a damning thing. Society is in everything. Society is intrinsic in all of our lives, even our personal issues. To quote C. Wright Mills, he would suggest to us, to all of us, that it is best not to consider our issues on a personal level, but rather on a societal level. A lot of things that we deem is something wrong with we ourselves can be put into a much better perspective if we look at it at a more holistic outward view. And if, let's say, for instance, we were to put in the idea of an addiction, perhaps a caffeine addiction. Now, if you were to be someone who drinks caffeine a lot, right, and you use it every day, and you have the same signs as what an addiction would be qualified as, you have an increased tolerance level to which you have to consume more caffeine just to get the same net effect. You have withdrawal syndromes, mostly just grogginess, though, nothing life-threatening. You can't die from caffeine addiction. And there's also just the idea that it's a substance that will change the, chemical substance of your body. However, on a personal level, that may seem like an issue, right? But when we look at a societal level, about 60 million at the very least would be diagnosed with caffeine addiction then. And that was the reasoning for why the actual medical record, the actual medical notebook that, and I believe we're on DM5 so far. Yeah, we're currently undergoing DM5 for addiction and what, are the various types of addiction. They did not include caffeine addiction because even though it showed all the signs and it is, albeit essentially an addiction, it is not serious. It is not something that we need to be concerned about, and we all do it. There was a very similar topic with, okay, mind you, this may seem just a tad bit inappropriate for the situation. There's a similar topic with masturbation. The act of it was considered to be not just incredibly lewd, but something that could corrupt our minds. However, when we tried to throw science into it, it was only because society had a norm against this act. We had determined it to be inappropriate. And as such, we tried to force the medical world to follow suit. But no matter how often they try to research into the matter, you could not find nearly anything wrong with pleasuring one's own self. In fact, there were more benefits than there were any sort of detriment. However, Society gets to determine what is right and what is wrong. We are, and they call it structural constructionism. I know, sounds very similar, but yeah, we determine what is morality. And again, just to go back to that previous point, morality and science are fundamentally incompatible. You can't use them, but we're using them all the time. And the media is using it too, just to relate back to the media point. The media brings back their own story and they love to throw in evidence. They love to throw in their rationale behind it. But it's just a story, my good fellows. It's just a perspective. It's something that is, it's hogwash that's being thrown down and shoved into our throats.
But
And then we,
just to be sure here, because I know someone's going to say it, when you say this, you are not, in fact, saying that evidence does not matter.
Oh, of course. I feel like we all, the three of us, are kind of on the same page on
Because,
that.
like, I want to clarify that because I know eventually someone's going to watch this and they're going to listen to Josh say this and they're going to be like, oh, look, he says evidence doesn't matter. He's uneducated.
Yeah,
oh,
I was thinking about that myself just now, but I didn't really want to just bring that up and get him off of his role. But to be honest, yeah, I get where someone would and could think that, but I honestly, for me, I get it just because with certain things, evidence is obviously like mandatory. If you're gonna make an argument about anything scientific, you're gonna need evidence. But I think what Juice is trying to say is you shouldn't try to have a moral argument and then um, use facts behind it as a basis for your morality. I don't think it's about necessarily thinking that evidence is unnecessary or shouldn't be used when it comes to certain moral arguments, but I think that if you're trying to have an intellectual debate on where facts meet the route toward solutions, I don't think that you should sully that argument with morality. And I also think that if you're going to have a purely moral based argument, you shouldn't try to incorporate certain scientific evidence, especially if the evidence isn't absolute in that area. Because like with the transgender issue, a lot of people try to bring up certain evidence scientifically to say, well, in these I'm going to call them experiments just because that's pretty much what they are. In these controlled experiments, we've had a population of, let's say 100 to 200 transgender individuals who have gone through this, who have gone through that, and this treatment has shown to be most effective for them, and this one obviously isn't morally right and doesn't do this. And like once you say, once you try to slip in this specific treatment isn't morally right, it's like, well, that's a different argument than what is going to be best for the transgender population at large, because every individual is an individual person, and everybody who has a mental disorder that is atypical from typical functionality in society is going to need their own treatment based on what they think they need and what professional doctors of that field think that they need. And they need to come to a consensus. That's a completely different argument than, this is immoral and da 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 da. Because outside of that argument, then, we can all agree that whatever they brought up, whatever it is, if they say it's immoral and you can agree with that, you're gonna say, yeah, that's immoral. But if you just try to slip that in, it starts to change the direction of the conversation, and it allows people to have a certain platform above other people in that same conversation, whether or not the people in that recognize it or not. And it's kind of hard to have serious conversations about these sensitive topics, because once you bring that up, the emotions start to get really charged and stuff. And I feel like that's what happened with the I forgot what his name is, but the situation that initially started this conversation. People tried to look at it as, well, morally,
Vic?
yeah,
yeah.
Vic, morally this shouldn't be happening, and da 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 da. And we know this and we know that because we've done research, and it's just a bunch of words that try to substantiate people's moral arguments, but those are completely different conversations. And I feel like I feel like you and I get that that's what Josh was trying to say, but I feel like from the outside perspective, unless we clarify that, it might be a little hazy. But I
Yeah.
get what you're saying.
Right. Thanks for covering my bases there, you guys. Just it's a good thing. If my words got misconstrued then and there, it would have been sad.
Yeah,
So
because
yeah,
it's hard to have these kinds of conversations, especially when it's a progressive conversation and we're all learning at the same time. So, if one
Yeah.
of us says something and we slip up, if we want to clarify or whatever, I feel like that's in all of our best interest.
okay. So
All right.
yeah, we sat
Um,
on this topic for a while. Let's move on
well,
to the
yeah,
next thing.
it was an interesting topic. But right now I want to move on to our first big topic, which is the kid wearing the MAGA hat. I don't know if you'd call him a kid because he's a college student, who was attacked at UCLA
Well,
for
I mean,
wearing a MAGA hat.
if you want to bring up a kid who was wearing a MAGA hat who got attacked, we might also want to bring up that sixth grader who was on the bus getting attacked and berated and everything, and he also ended up suspended because he
Oh
was wearing a
shoot!
MAGA hat.
I didn't
So,
even know about that one. I just knew about the guy at STSU, or
Oh,
not
you.
STSU,
I'm
UCLA.
just saying, since you said kid, I might as well bring that one up too,
Oh,
No, you
jeez.
should have
since
brought that
we're
one up because I didn't even know.
Oh,
oh
that
yeah.
adds dimensions to the debacle there. Anyway, yeah, a little context behind it. Behind what the hat is and what it stands for.
Okay.
Oh no, I'm offering for you guys to do it because me myself, I don't know. I haven't heard about this particular issue, so I'm curious too.
I mean,
Well,
for
from what I
me,
understand, he showed up onto the campus wearing his MAGA hat for some kind of activism because the video shows him standing in front of a table with a sign in front of it. And this person walks up to him and berates him for wearing that hat, screaming at him because it's a symbol of hate. And the person wearing the MAGA hat is just respectfully standing there saying, "Look, I'm trying to listen to your opinions, and you're screaming at me. Who seems most respectful here?" To which the guy starts beating him. Because at this point, the guy wearing the MAGA hat has pulled out his phone and is recording the interaction.
wasn't he saying some? Wasn't the other dude saying like, "I don't want to be on effort recording"? Da 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 da. I didn't really get to
Yeah,
watch the entire the video,
but like the full context before that, this guy was like in his face, like rabid frothing in his face, screaming at this MAGA guy.
I haven't watched the video in its entirety, so I wouldn't know. I'm gonna have to watch it after we're done.
And
This.
Oh no, it's a freaky video. I'm actually
yeah,
what you guys are talking about it. I'm viewing it right now.
and this guy pulls out his phone and starts, "Hey, look, calm down." This guy hits the phone out of his hand, which doesn't that remind you of the guy who kicked the phone out of the
I was
woman's
about to
hand?
say that.
Oh, that was the most extra way. Can I just say that was the most extra way to get a phone out of their hand?
And then like
He
one
stepped
other
back,
guy,
got in stance and then kicked, and he
yeah.
still screwed it up and kicked her in the face.
Oh yeah,
Oh my God.
those girls got so freaked out. I mean, dude, talk about like getting like a misconception. But I mean, come on, he kicked her in the face. That's just not right. I mean, he didn't intend to, but come on.
Shouldn't have been
But
doing that anyway.
I know,
It's literally like going back to kindergarten and
but yeah,
getting berated by the teacher because you threw a block at someone's eye and was just like, I didn't mean to hit their eye. Like, you shouldn't have been throwing the block. Why are you behaving like that? You shouldn't be behaving like that. Didn't your mother tell you not to throw your toys at people's faces or throw them at all? Like, hello.
but it's also like so crazy because this is a really big indicator of a lot of shit that happens these days because being frankly honest, this isn't the first time people have been attacked just for wearing MAGA hats, right?
Oh
This
yeah.
isn't the
There was
first
that
time
video.
people who are expressing their political opinions have been assaulted in the streets. And I think it's this interesting trend we see that really says a lot about the political system because I don't know about you, but I haven't really heard too many stories that involve the idea Trump supporter attacks liberal because of their political beliefs.
Yeah, I've never heard one of those that hasn't been a hoax. Like I haven't. And like literally every time that there's been a situation like that, it's been a hoax. You know, Exhibit A, Jussie Smollett. You know,
Yeah, and then
he's going to prison for 3 years, isn't he?
yeah, 3 years. And then you have these crazy stories that happen all the fucking time where conservatives and libertarians constantly get attacked, physically assaulted, just because of their opinions. Because their opinions are hateful.
And people want to say like
there are serious air quotes around hateful.
Going back to the trans thing, like everybody wants to say, you know, oh, if you're a trans person, if you're a gay person, if you're a black person, you're every day you're facing these struggles of existing in society. And it's just like if you're wearing a MAGA hat, you're way more likely to get physically attacked than anybody. Like at the very least, as somebody who is so obviously not like typical, like if you're anybody who's just not typical, you're gonna get berated by people, no matter who you are. You know, like
yeah,
it doesn't matter who you are. Like people just need to grow a freaking thicker skin and understand that that's just how the world works. But it's completely different when, for a political view that is literally in line with who is currently in office as commander in chief, you're gonna get physically assaulted. You know, you're much more likely to get physically assaulted than any one of those individuals. Like, I'm sorry, but that's just the case. And if you can't accept that, then you have an inaccurate take on the world, because that's just how things are now.
Right, they're getting incredibly violent over these opinions, and when someone displays that they have a particular opinion, this is a core thing to take issue with, is that people are implicitive when they try to bring up when they try to bring up their personal ideology. Just because someone brings up one aspect, they have perhaps a one banner to tout, or they have the MAGA hat, right?
Yeah.
It does not mean that they ascribe themselves to everything negative that you plant on that particular political group or that particular ideology. However, this is the end. I knew a person who very much ran on implicitive reasoning there, and this person, who shall not be named, was very much the "if you are part of the problem" kind of accuser.
Yeah,
They
I feel
would,
like I know who you're talking
I
about.
feel like I know
we know,
exactly who you're
but do
talking
not.
about.
Do not mention the name. I do not want to sully this person's name. I'm not here to spread gossip.
No, I
However,
won't, because I love her. She is great, but I know exactly who you're
I
talking
know.
about.
I'm just kidding.
right. But anyway, she would suggest to us, and she suggested to me personally, that they are by association at fault. But that is not a correct way of viewing the world.
That's
Well,
so
guilt by
Because
rude.
association is
If
one
you
of the
do
most common logical
that, you're
fallacies I
devolving your
see in
intelligence
modern politics.
tribal headspace. It's so like, why would you want to be in a headspace where you see everybody around you as, you know, immediately potential threat? Oh my gosh, potential threat. Like why would you choose to do that? You know?
Well, I think it stems a lot because I've written the video. I just haven't actually recorded it. But it stems a lot with what I talked about when I was writing my idea of why the left is so easily radicalized. And it's because, unlike the right, which generally right-wing people are taught to engage the other side and try to understand where the other side is coming from, especially in the modern day, left-wing people are almost taught that conservatives, libertarians, and other right-wing, economically minded thinkers are not human.
Yeah, it's so
People who value small government are taught as if they're not human. And it's not even just parents, right? All three of us went through the California school system. We know that it's taught in high school, too, that conservatives are not people.
Honestly.
And so
It's
I think a
crazy.
lot
Like
of that is the root of...
even give any room to Trump supporters at our previous high school, like you're pretty much in line with being like a Nazi or a racist or whatever. Like it's that easy.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And
like, especially when people like me, I'm a libertarian. I don't like Trump, but I will still say that he's one of the best presidents we've had for a while. Because imagine this metaphor. We're on a cold floor, and there's been a person who comes in every day and just whips you nonstop all day, every day. And then this guy comes in and he whips you about 15 times and then leaves. He seems like a pretty good guy. Right now, that's Trump,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He's not quite as bad as everyone else. He's still bad, right?
Yeah, but he's not
Government
like
control
the
is
worst.
still fucking awful, and he's encouraging a lot of government control over people's lives. But it's not as bad as previous administrations.
Yeah, I'm comfortable saying that.
right, it's all a matter of perspective, and this is where there and an incorrigible part of the radical, be either side, is that they do not give in. For someone who is of an radical opinion versus those who are moderate, the fundamental difference is that those who are radical see arguments as them defending their point at all costs. They inherently make it a battle. They inherently make it a I have to win basis.
I feel
Whereas
attacked.
for a moderate, argumentation is understanding. Argumentation is an opportunity to learn. And that, and although people who would identify as a radical thing may be pissed at this, there is a very logical right and wrong way of looking at this. Argumentation as a battle is not progressive in the least.
It doesn't
Argu-
lead people anywhere, right?
of course.
Yeah,
Right.
there's no real like end result of growth or going forward with anyone's ideas if it's just purely based on an argument.
Oh yeah, if it's purely based on arguing like that, totally, it's just an issue. It's where a lot of chaos is sown. People go into arguments, and because arguments are perceived in the negative light, there is a lot of hate that develops. There's a lot of resentment that develops. However, that intrinsic lack of perspective is why we have so many issues run about. If argumentation was to seem purely as an educational standard, as something for improvement rather than something for conflict, then
Yeah,
I believe we'd be far ahead than we are. However, that's not the case, and as such, those you guys would identify that the left is particularly inclined to do this. They do not actively seek out the other side for argumentation because, in this case, they are far more inclined to perceive argumentation as battle, and as such, they're tired of it. They don't want to battle. But when they do find something to be opinionated about, trust me, it gets vicious. And it gets vicious because they see it as battle, and we
Yeah,
do not. We do not see it as a point of conflict. And so it throws us off. It throws us off, and it makes us inclined, on the other hand, to see the left as a bit crazy when we just don't understand their rationality. Albeit it's flawed rationality, I will admit that straight up.
it's still a type
However,
of rationale though, and we have to accept that if we're gonna have a productive conversation at all.
oh
yeah,
yeah,
obviously. You
right.
can't understand someone if you can't begin to have a discussion with them.
Yeah. And so what was the next topic for today, guys?
Oh, okay. The next topic I wanted to talk about was the ISIS brides.
Oh god.
Ah, right. Here we
So
go.
I don't know if
Okay.
you remember this, but a couple of years ago, some 15-year-olds and other various ages of teenager snuck out of the country because they had scheduled or they had organized for themselves to be married off to ISIS militants. And they believed in the Sharia cause, and they were going to bring about the Islamic State with their husbands. Well, now most, if not all, of their husbands are dead, and most of them are hiding in the last refuge of ISIS, being told to shut up and sit in a circle. Probably not what's actually happening, but that's what I imagine is happening with my dramatic mind. Um, But some of them have escaped, and they're trying to return home. There's a big case in America of someone trying to come back, and there's also a big case
In the
in
UK.
UK.
No.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but
No, goodbye. You ain't coming
I'm
back.
thinking that if somebody has actively decided to betray the US because they want to join a radical terrorist group, they should at least have to go through some kind of de-radicalization process.
There needs to be some kind
As
of like,
strange as it seems, they probably need to go through some kind of re-education camp because they have been brainwashed, basically. And these people on live TV have said things along the lines of the West is evil, but they want to return to the West to raise their kids that they had with their militant ISIS husbands. Like, we can't just have people like that in the country because it's not even a hyperbolic, oh, if we let these people into the country, some of them might be terrorists. No, these people ran off with terrorists to have kids with terrorists and lived with terrorists married to them for years.
multiple marriages, mind you, and multiple times that they had kids.
These people are fully dedicated to the cause. Air quotes around that.
The cause.
And we want to
that's
just
accurate.
let these people back into the country scot-free as if nothing happened.
Yeah, like you know, there's attorneys and stuff going, well, she should, you know, she's willing to go to jail, she's willing to do this, she's willing to do that, and it's just like, that doesn't matter. What do you think happens when you mix multiple bad people together? You know, like they're not just gonna take the moral high ground. Like the only time that ever happens, literally the only time that ever happens, is if you put a child rapist in a jail. Like that's the only time that other guys take the moral high ground and take it upon themselves to make sure that that person isn't treated well while they're in jail. Like that's literally the only time that happens. Like if we have domestic terrorists all over the country going to jail. People who decide, you know, on the rare occasion that there is a white supremacist who actually breaks the law and goes out and does some crazy shit to take down, you know, black people or Muslim people or whatever. That's very rare, and most of the time when that happens, they go to jail and they serve their time and they're out, and they corrupt some other people while they're in there somehow or another. They make some friendships, they do whatever. You know, there's gonna be other people like them in there, like. If you really think that them just going to jail is going to solve the issue, you're dead wrong, because literally people are going to die because of that. Like she was the girl who I think is trying to come back to the U.S. was tweeting out shit to her followers and her supporters, going, you know, get a truck and run them over. Like she was giving them inspiration and instructions on what to do up until she decided, you know, I don't want to be a part of this anymore, supposedly. And it's just like, what? I don't know, man. It's people are crazy.
They really are. And like the idea that the people as a whole are sort of siding with these people is kind of a little bit disheartening.
It's
not even
disconcerting.
Really disheartening and concerning.
It's disconcerting to me, because like, if you can't recognize a national security threat when it's right in front of you, when it's on news headlines right now, even aside from like the border thing, because that was already a contentious topic, but this is literally the same issue, the exact same issue that Obama himself was like, you know, if you come after Americans, if you try to say something about Americans, if you try to do something to Americans, you know, we got long memories. We're gonna come after you. We're gonna kill all of you. That's pretty much what I remember him saying. And I don't see anybody reacting the same way as Mr. You know, fallen Messiah as he once did when he was in office. It's just like, and like
a good metaphor that I've been telling people when talking with this about them is, because Islam is like the darling of the left. I have no idea why. It is an oppressive religion that believes that women should be subservient to men and gays should be murdered. And it believes that anyone who doesn't follow their way should be killed. And despite how many people will say, oh, Islam is the religion of peace, bullshit. I've read your texts. It literally says in your holy text that every Muslim should have a sword so they can kill any non-believers they don't meet. That is part of your religious fucking text. You
And
cannot
to
tell
top
me
that
that
off,
your religion is not a religion of conquest.
to top that off, the fact that it's a religious a religious conquest text doesn't even register to a lot of the people who are promoting it, and they want to say, you know, well, before all that he was this and he was that, and it's just like in the text it says that you're supposed to go chronologically to the most recent part of it, and that's when he was a warlord and he changed up his story, whatever, you know, Mr. Bonded to the Most High or whatever, and he was a warlord, and he decided, you know, I'm gonna tell these people that it's basically my way or the highway, and the highway is death. So I really don't see how that shit's fucking peaceful. To be completely honest, like the only Muslim people that I know that are in America that I actually fuck with are people who don't even go hard.
Yeah,
You
people who
know, like
basically don't go to church.
they don't even like themselves, like being women, they themselves don't even like the headwear that they have to deal with every fucking day. And the only reason they do it or did it back when I was like you know, when we were in high school together and shit, was because their parents made them. So I don't see the logic. I really don't.
But
Because
like, if you want to take this from a metaphor that the left will get, because we already had the discussion, Islam is their darling. Uh, think of like if let's pick a random female name, Jessica.
okay.
Jessica in the 1940s runs off to go marry a German soldier, and during World War II,
She's claiming, you
she
know, she's fucking with the Nazi regime and
she's
everything.
sleeping with this Nazi. She is up in the higher ups of the Nazi regime. She knows everything that's going on, and she gets on public radio and talks about how America is the devil and that Hitler is going to bring glorious end to the evils of capitalism and America.
Not to mention the fact that even in this hypothetical situation, at the very least, she isn't basically made a brood mother and fucking not even allowed up in the upper ranks. Not to mention that. So
That is true.
even with this example, we're giving her the benefit of the doubt and allowing, you know, the sentiments that we're having now with people going, well, at least, you know, maybe we could learn something from her. She's saying that she knows stuff, you know, like what the fuck is she gonna know? Like, they don't respect women over there. They literally could give zero fucks
Well,
about women if they really wanted to. The
yeah,
only reason why they had her was so that they could radicalize her and basically make her a brood mother and
but
fucking
if you
pop out
ask,
more radicalized babies. That's literally it. Like,
but the idea that I'm going with is if that was the situation,
we wouldn't
and then
even.
after World War II, she's saying, "Oh, you should let my children and I into the U.S." No logical person in their right mind is going to look at this woman who ran off to marry a Nazi, had kids with a Nazi, and talked about how evil America was because, I don't know, they're dirty Jew lovers. Nobody's going to let her back into the country. Jessica is fucked.
Jessica's gone. Jessica could fuck off. And that's what I'm saying. Like, even in that situation, when there's actual reason for people who want to say that kind of thing, who are just like, well, we could get information from her or whatever. That's one of the main saving graces, supposedly, of her right now, Miss the so-called Jessica of today, you know. And even then, you know, fuck all to that, because we're not dealing with that. We're not bringing that into our country. We don't fuck with Nazis. And then all of a sudden, because oh, she went to the Muslims, you know, the Muslims are fine, you know, they radicalized her, but because it's just Muslims, she could come back. It's just like, it's not just Muslim culture, okay? She went to ISIS, the most radicalized version of that kind of culture. Not to mention the fact that the culture on a wide scale already has all these views, you know, basically in their text. It's just like whatever you want to say, however you want to interpret it, she's still basically going to Nazis. Like
Yeah.
unless you have, you know, taken your Muslim faith and your Islamic culture and allowed yourself to be integrated into actual westernized society, unless you've done that, I'm not comfortable with Muslim people. I'm sorry, like
Oof.
sorry, not sorry, but like in general, unless you are integrated and like you're a normal functioning person, like the people that I know who are of Muslim faith but actually function like normal people instead of having those anti-gay bullshit ass uh, views on the world. I don't see why, even in that situation, even in any situation where you decided, you know, I'm just gonna go over there and be part of the normal Muslim culture.
Well, I mean,
Any
in
sane
America,
woman.
they had in America the people doing, I forget what they're called, the Census Bureau did several questionnaires, and it
Uh,
turns out that 75% of Americans or Muslims living in America, not Americans living in Muslim, that would be fucking weird. Muslims living in America think that suicide bombing is an acceptable form of social activism.
well, you know what? I stand by what I said. Like I'm sorry. I'm not sorry though because like
Like,
I'm not comfortable
obviously,
with that.
obviously, there are forms of Islam that are compatible with Western ideas. The problem is that
That's not what we're
we don't
saying.
try to encourage that. We encourage the form of we often encourage the forms of Islam that are not compatible with Western ideas.
And again, and compatible is the key word there.
Like,
There are people that swing either way. There are those that are incredibly peaceful and passive, and that's fine, right?
but
However,
then,
there
like,
are
from my
more
perspective too.
right.
Sorry, I want to hear a lot from you, Josh, because I haven't heard a lot of you. But I just kind of want to
I'm
interject
talking
from
like
like
crazy.
my perspective. The Muslims I know, Muslim people have so far proven to me to be the second most anti-Semitic people in the U.S. behind Catholic Mexicans. I don't know what it is, but I've never met a Catholic Mexican that is okay with Jews. Where the fuck did Alchem just go?
Oh crap. He'll probably have reintegrated in a bit. But anyway, let's keep it going. Yeah, so my perspective on this.
I don't
The
know what just happened. I'm sorry, my phone cut out. What happened? What
Okay,
happened?
Oh, welcome, Malcolm. Yeah,
the last
I was just about to do my little bit here. The the way I see it is you guys touched on a lot of like the strong points there. And I was just taking a class. This happened to be a communications class, and I was talking to this guy. He was ex-military, and he did a few tours in Arabia. In fact, he was actually originally born in Saudi Arabia, and then and when he was a child, an infant, he was in the US. So really, really tied to the culture there. And even he would have to agree. He would have to agree that there is a lot to take issue with in that culture. And this is coming from a man who not only can trace his point of origin to Saudi Arabia, but someone who's done several tours and has integrated himself into that society, into that sort of ideology. It's just that even after all this experience, he finds it objectively wrong. And that is because we have different standards. Cultures are fundamentally different. There is never an equal, an inequity among cultures. That's endocentrism. However, the fact that they are different means that they can then cause chaos. They can cause tension. We don't want to see suicide bombings. They may welcome it. And you know what? Good on them. But they don't want to see things that we have. We don't want to see things that they don't want. And so while we shouldn't have hate for it, we have to understand that if we try to push those boundaries, there's going to be a lot of tension that comes through it. And so similar to how a business wouldn't want to work with a partner anymore because they happen to have a bad reputation brewing, it doesn't mean that that partner is necessarily bad, it doesn't necessarily mean that they should be even held accountable for the bad reputation that has been placed upon them.
Especially
But
if there's
there's
like different branches of that.
right, right. It's just that there is so much tension and chaos in the process of trying to commune with them and trying to be a part with them that it may not even be worth it. And again, let's not take Occam's words of, oh, I wouldn't trust them too harshly. There are a lot of people in this perspective, and wouldn't that have some justification to it? There has been a lot of issues that are brewing. At the same time, to their credit, one would also have to imagine that all the people who are peaceful, all the people that are already integrated into Americanized culture, as Akka mentioned, those who have become a part of, have proven that Islam is not this indelible stain on the culture. It's something that can be reversed, and it's something that therefore
It's not
can
even.
be.
It's listen. When I say that, it's not even just me saying, that I'm listening to all these stories, and in contrast to my experience with the few, normal functioning people who happen to have a Muslim background that I'm comfortable with. Those people are the only people that I have interacted with. That's not even what I'm saying. I've interacted and I've lived in areas of even our city where where like slightly less intense versions of the self-engineered ghettos in the UK where they're happening, in a lot of low income housing in our area. There's a lot of people who have come here who are Muslim, who come from an Islamic background, and it's not that I'm against them just for being them or anything. It's literally, if you have any type of culture, if you have any type of person, okay, and they have a background that has historically been against you, against people like you, you're going to be uncomfortable. And when you're talking to me and you don't understand where I'm coming from, you don't know where I've come from, you don't know what I've experienced, and you also don't know the fact that I've experienced discrimination from Muslim people who haven't been properly integrated into westernized society. You don't know that I've been attacked by Muslim people for being who I am. It just for living in those areas where it is primarily of Islamic influence, where Muslim culture prevails versus what supposedly would be the majority in those areas where it's like an inner city community where it would be a lot of black people or whatever who are of typical American culture. But that's not the case. I've lived in these areas and I understand what happens when you're not of the norm in their eyes. Okay, like I've had rocks thrown at me, I've been attacked. Like y'all don't know everything about me. And it's not that I don't trust Muslim people in general. It's the fact that I don't trust Muslim culture that hasn't been properly integrated with westernized society. And I don't trust the people who take that kind of religion and allow every single part of it, up to and including the wartime professions of Muhammad or whoever,
Yeah.
to be part of their daily thought process and how they've integrated that into themselves rather than being a typical westernized person. Because like if you even from an outside perspective that isn't thinking about the fact that American culture and westernized culture in general is fairly heavily influenced by Judeo-Christian values, you can understand that within the culture there are a lot of central ideas based on homophobia, you know, uh, what's called the opposite of gynocentrism.
Um, ethnocentrism.
I guess we're going with that. Having guys as top dog or whatever by basically law. And
Oh,
the endorsement of Sharia law. All that stuff is completely inappropriate for American culture,
yeah,
especially when you take into account the fact that you're going to have moments where they are, at least attempting to mesh with American culture. And
yeah,
it's not about being, some Islamophobe or whatever. It's about you as an individual recognizing me as an individual experiencing what damage those kinds of ideas can do.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that relates back to the, if I just want to bring it back with respect to that, this is my perspective on the ISIS brides as we're calling them. I believe that yes, they should be let back. However, the caveat is they need to be reintroduced because obviously they were all about ISIS. They were all about those ideals. We as a society are not. And while that does not like arbitrarily determine that they are inherently bad people and thus should not try to seek some sort of solace in our nation, they need to abide by our standards, the standards that we have brought on. This isn't about right or wrong. This is about what we do. And this is about what they're going to have to do to be a part of us.
Personally, I think that they're sleeper cells, and I think that they should lay in the bed that they made for themselves. Personally, but
Again,
I,
tinfoil hat.
you know,
Wait,
But I mean,
just a quick question. Trigger Weasel, where do you stand on this again?
I I think that they can be let in, but I think that they need to go through not re-education camps, but basically re-education camps, so that they can be de-radicalized. Because
Ah,
they've, for years they've lived in this environment that is heavily radicalized and heavily believes in Sharia law, but they haven't really learned how to cope with Western ideas. That and they've learned to put is extremist Islamic ideas on a pedestal. And I think that before we can let them, before we can even consider letting them back in the country, they need to go through some kind of program to de-radicalize them.
I see. Okay.
not even
So,
just not, the thing is though, when you do that, there's a whole other situation, like where economically we have what, at least 40 people that have done this, and then that's just in the US, right? And on top of that, like the UK is going to have their own situation dealing with that, so they're going to have to go through some process of putting legislation through or getting some kind of act pushed through that would, pull more taxpayer dollars, more efforts from people who could be dealing with actual crimes and actual situations happening over there when they already have no-go areas up, including Sweden. If you're talking about the European Union on a larger scale, and in the US, the UK itself has no-go zones for the police and the military and stuff within their own borders, just because they know that it's going to cause a stink either with the media or they're going to end up dead. And it's just like, if you already have that kind of stuff going on, and then on top of that, you want to have another distraction like bringing back people who consciously left and allowed themselves to be radicalized for years on end, it's just where is it going to end? Where is it going to end when we think about all that? And then on top of that, it's not just the women who want to come back. It's like, oh, I want to bring my kids, I want to bring this, I want to bring that with me. It's just like every single layer of that situation has to be analyzed until it can't be torn apart anymore. And by that point, there's going to be a whole other potential scenario where that that could bring up a whole other bout of bitterness and everything from those kinds of people. And it's just like, for me, I really think that it would be smartest and safest for the American population if we did not have that kind of situation getting brought back onto our land willingly by the government itself, because right now we have enough to deal with as it is. We're dealing with the southern border situation. We're dealing with people who are all of a sudden changing their tune with, the wall. Everybody's like, that's a fence. You're just bouncing ideas off of what democratic people have done, and you can't take credit for it, and you're not doing this and you're not doing that. Like, that's what some of the main arguments from the left happening right now about the wall. And it's just like, we're already having that just with securing our own borders. Like, why would we want to bring literal known Islamic terrorists, people who are aiding the Islamic terrorists, doing both of those as one individual, and then on top of that, popping out more of those individuals? Like, I don't understand. I really don't. It's crazy. It's crazy to me. I don't understand how how that would work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that it is crazy. But
on top of like even just having to bring all those people back, and let's say we did bring those people back, you know, let's say we decided that we were going to track down every single woman and child belonging to those women who got brainwashed or whatever and decided that they wanted to go to Islam run territory and go over there and directly get involved with ISIS of all groups, you know, like let's say we tracked all those women down, sent in choppers that somehow by the grace of God didn't get shot down, brought all those women back, and then put all those individual women through de-radicalization programs. Not to mention, they're going to also have to put every kid through that situation. And that's not even a guarantee, because as a kid, you're going to internalize stuff and you're going to deal with stuff how you're going to deal with it. So we have all these Islam-raised kids, not even talking about the women who went from Christianity or at least a Judeo-Christian value set living in the U.S. They went over there, took out that foundation entirely, got completely radicalized, and now all of a sudden they all want to come back at the same time, but bring all them back over here, even if that worked on the women, even if that worked on the people who left. We're also dealing with so many kids who were born and raised in that. We're talking about the same exact type of kids who on social media have been circulating around, you know, shooting guns and being part of the forces who are targeting and killing U.S. soldiers. Like, it's not that fucking hard to understand that this is a huge national security risk. And I thank God Donald Trump's not letting them back in, at least as of right now. Because it's just like there's so many different steps to this that people are just altogether avoiding, you know. And it's just like eventually, if you are going down a staircase with 100 steps and you skip every 4, you're probably going to end up tripping and falling somewhere or another. It's not that hard to predict that if you're being, you know, reckless with how you're going down the staircase. Like not to use everything, you know, as an analogy, but like, that's kind of the only way I know how to make these points, other than going, you know, increment by increment through the situation, like actually talking about it. And it's just like, for me, I've already thought about this, and I don't understand why more people aren't having this conversation, because even again, going back to the people I know who are of Muslim culture, who have properly integrated into American society, even those people do not agree with the way Islam treats its women, treats its children, treats, you know, people in general.
yeah.
It's like I don't know. Just,
well, now that
we
we've talked
want to
about
bring
that,
ISIS people here.
yeah,
How the fuck did we get to this? How did we get to this?
I don't. Now that we've talked about that, with about a half an hour left, let's talk about the final one. This is going to be a bit of a fun topic, because not only did Bernie Sanders announce his bid for the 2020 presidential election, but guess who else drug herself out from her grave to run for president in the 2020 election?
Wait, is Hillary actually?
Hillary fucking Rodham
Holy shit.
fucking Clinton.
I didn't even hear about her.
Even
Wait,
though
for
she
real?
allegedly said she wouldn't. Dear Lord.
I saw an article
she
yesterday
said a
that
lot
said
of
that
she
she
said a
has
lot of things
announced
that
her
aren't
run
true,
for the
you know?
president of the United States.
Now, isn't that just effing convenient that they both suddenly leap in there? I haven't heard news about Bernie, but for quite a while now, people are always looking to Miss Clinton simply because she was the runner-up for the last presidential election, and she's like, no, I'm too tired. I just don't want to do it. I can't do it again. And then look at this; they both leap on it. That I mean, again, tinfoil hat, but I smell a party plan.
I smell bullshit.
And
I don't know what the fuck you're smelling, but I smell
crazy
bullshit.
thing is that within the day that Bernie Sanders announced his run for president, he keeps touting that the average donation to his campaign was $27. Did I do a good enough Jew voice? Am I a good?
You have a pretty Jewish voice in general, so you know.
But
I'm not complaining.
But
I give it a solid 7.6 out of 10. But continue.
Yeah. 7.6. Good one, Akam. Exactly.
You know, I
it's about
gotta be
$4 million
generous. Holy
within
fuck.
16 hours. More than
16
that.
hours? Holy shit.
Because that's how many millennials decided to donate to Bernie Sanders' campaign.
And we all know that that's just gonna go to another fancy house. I don't,
I mean, inevitably, I don't understand what they're doing because, last time Bernie Sanders won the nomination, the Democratic Party decided to give it to Clinton anyway. And their excuse, by the way, was, we're a private business. We don't have to engage in democracy. You're a fucking political party. What the
based on
fuck do you
democracy.
mean? You're a business.
Your name is democracy. How the fuck?
The Democratic Party, we're a company. We're a private company. We don't have to engage in democracy. What the fuck is that?
I don't understand what's
But
happening.
after Bernie won the nomination, he gave in and gave most of his campaign contributions to her. And they're going to do this
again. Yeah. But I mean, to be honest, I really don't think that they're gonna have any real chance of getting into office, just because of the fact that right now, even though we had a rough start with Donald, Trump is at a good 52% approval rating as far as I know. Last time I checked, it was yesterday, and
he's still at 52.
Huh?
He's still at a 52.
Oh, he's still at 52. So around this time, during the Obama administration, he's way higher than Obama as far as I know. And on top of that, he's at a 92, 93% approval rating in the Republican Party, which was way higher than it was before. But I mean, seeing how the Democratic Party's going with AOC, I
mean, they're fucking dead.
Honestly,
the only reason they're not dead right now is because for some reason we as a people have let the school system brainwash generations into thinking that socialism is a good idea rather than teaching it as the economic monster it is.
Well, the thing is, we haven't really allowed it to happen per se, as much as it's just kind of gotten into our heads as time has gone on. Because first it started out with healthcare. Everybody got used to everything being run by Medicare and everything, which is an economic hellhole as it is. But we didn't really notice that because around that time we were all still pretty young, so we were kind of just letting our parents run everything. And because our parents had to listen to the government, they never really had anything to say about it other than, we're going to a doctor's appointment, get your shoes on. That's pretty much it. And, where's your card? Where's your this? Where's your that? And that's all we've kind of known for the past, 2 generations. And then on top of that, a lot of us have also, especially people in the Black community, not to say white people have any, less, likelihood of using this stuff, but a lot of Black people have kind of made it their mission to praise Obama for all the stuff that he's done, and let their kids see that as a proper example of how to appreciate the government when they try to what's it called, deploy socialism into the daily lives of people using the government as a club. So it's not really about the school system or any one component of the private sector's influence on the public. It's more just the government putting their boot to our throat and saying, do this or you get fined. And that's pretty much how it's been for a good decade.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's
Trigger Weasel, your turn.
I mean,
sloppy seconds, anyone? I'm sorry. You brought up masturbation earlier and I haven't gotten over it.
I just don't understand the whole, because there's a whole bunch of people already running, And the crazy thing is, every single Democratic nominee has already agreed to Alexandria Ocasio Cortez's Green New Deal, which we talked about last week, Josh.
Right.
But what I think is not on like the thing I think is great is that people are already talking about how because Kamala Harris is
We
running.
know.
Yeah,
Wait, she's
and
running?
she's running.
Holy shit! This is gonna be
And
so
people are
funny.
already talking. People on the left are cannibalizing themselves because they're already talking about, oh, if you vote for Bernie over Kamala Harris, you're admitting that you're a racist.
What?
I know.
Wait, what is Kamala?
Um, I'm pretty sure she's black. At least that's what people keep telling me.
Oh my god!
Oh, okay.
I mean, we all saw it coming. You know, we all saw it coming. All the fragmentation that was already happening within the radical leftist party, at least, it was apparent from the beginning. But now, like, it's already happening before the next election even happens, and I feel like a lot more people, by the time the actual primaries even get going, are going to start walking away even more because the walkaway movement's still happening. You know, like
Yeah,
more and more people every day are getting onto the other side of the aisle. Like my friend, I've been showing him what's going on, and his eyes are completely like they like if I could see his reactions, I'm sure that they would just be open in infant like awe because of how just utterly fucked the situation is. But I don't
I
know.
mean,
I
it's
don't know.
getting to the point where like one of my friends or family friends, I'm friends with her on Facebook. She's this like soccer mom kind of
Dude.
person. So you know that she's like liberal as fuck. And she's sitting there talking about. She made this big post about how the whole Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton making another bid for president and the whole scandal, not really scandal, but all the shit happening around that is finally pushing her over the edge. And she re
Oh,
registered as a Republican.
oh shit.
Like, we're getting to the point where soccer moms are walking away from the Democratic Party. That's how fucked they are.
I'm
Oof.
excited. I'm excited. I really can't wait to see just how much of a landslide Trump is going to win by. Because honestly, God,
Well, I think the big question is who's he going to be up against? Because if the Democratic Party has learned from their mistakes and decides not to shoot themselves in the foot again,
it won't be Hillary and it won't be
then we
Bernie.
might have Bernie, who might actually be a close contender, like I said, because of the number of millennials who believe that socialism works.
Yeah, but by
And
that
because of the
time,
number
I feel like a lot of those same millennials are gonna be looking at the numbers again and understanding that it's not sustainable, especially with the way people are reacting to AOC's Green New Deal plan. Because if we're gonna go by the way the Democratic Party has been going, I really think uh, that that he's going to be endorsing the Green New Deal and kind of using it as like a baseboard for him to start building his own campaign promises and everything off of. And I
yeah.
feel like if he tries at all to go by what AOC's been trying to, I'm sorry, let me be respectful. Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. Uh, I really feel like it's just going to be another instance of them shooting themselves in the foot, like you said, and it's going to be a landslide win for Trump, either Trump or some other Republican who kind of has similar ideas and is
Right.
less
This is,
problematic.
and I'm glad you brought up that particular point because Trump, there's a reason he won last time. He has a base behind him. Although the Republican Party obviously is going to have a base behind them just in general, he happens to be a part of that, even though his ideal sorts are skewed from there. However, this election seems to be pick your best people to take down Trump night. I mean, that's why I think this election is going to be about take down Trump night. Everyone wants to do it. Everyone takes that honor. They want to be the quote unquote savior of the nation because Trump has this. Oh, his reputation is stained,
Yeah.
stained, and yet That just means that
Orange
someone
man
else
bad.
can.
Orange
Like,
man bad.
Basically, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and here's the problem with that. The problem with that is there's a reason why Trump won. There's a reason why people are using MAGA hats. There's a reason why, even though he does get bad publicity, it's not a ton of firestorm. It's been progressively getting better. The fact of the matter is that for whatever faults he has as a president, his ideas still stand. Him as a president, as an ideal, still stands. And people will support that because there is something that is support. He appeals to a lot of, he appeals to a very large demographic. He appeals to middle class. He appeals to a lot of like certain white communities. He appeals to, for instance, because of his vice president Pence, mind you, he appeals to the evangelicus. That's an interesting one because Trump was allegedly atheist a few years ago, but you know how we of little faith will sway, right? Now, because of this, he's got a base. It's not.
My thing is, it's not even just about like you brought up different types of white people that support him and different, you know. It's just like it's not even just white people though. Like tons of Mexicans support Trump. Tons of black people support Trump.
Well, yeah,
Like
there's a
it's like
growing movement of people who are
It's not
hashtags
just
walking
white
away from
people.
the
It's not
plantation.
just the race. It's also your
yeah,
economic class, your socio-economic class. It's also your faith, your ideals that way. It's also perhaps just a mere. And I know this is going to rouse some ambiguity, but there's been a lot of anxiety. There's been a lot of underlying irritation with the government. So Trump represents someone that, for better or for worse, shakes things up, right? And whether that is in a good way or a bad way, he is the embodiment of change from the usual politician taking the spotlight, which people had their ideas about Bernie. People had their ideas about Hillary. People are going to have their ideas about these new potential electees. But for the most part, they are people that you would expect to be president. They are people that are going to follow the status quo. They're going to have this sort of quit. They're going to have this sort of nature about them that will respect the rules.
And
But
people
there's
have sort of
power.
learned at this point that, sorry,
Yeah,
people have sort of learned at this point that DC and politics in general is controlled by this small social elite class,
that are
right?
completely detached from reality.
Yeah, they're
right,
completely
right.
detached from reality, that have no idea that the average American, I mean, we're not suffering. We're still in a first world country,
Yeah,
but
thank God.
things are getting worse and worse for us. And they have no idea. Trump represents the idea that someone from outside can come into this group of echo chambered, bubbled elitists, like this almost oligarchical group, and take over. And if you want to know why even Republicans hate Trump, even the Republicans in charge do not like him, it is for that reason. They are part.
Even then, as of now, the Republican approval rating of him is skyrocketing.
Yeah,
Right,
because he's
right.
connected to people, not to the social elite.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And
what were you saying, Josh?
yeah, and so as I was getting to, yeah, it's as you say, they are incredibly detached from reality. There's like a bit of a dissociation with what the elite perceive as the world and what, everyone else, faces the reality of the world to be. Trump is incredibly different this way. He already has built his fortune. He's built his fame. He is not versed in these ways, which means that while he is not experienced, he is also not brainwashed. He is not set in what DC normally does.
He's
And
forged
we,
his own character, and thankfully, it was outside of that bubble of social elitism.
right. And of course, people,
Elitism.
uh, yeah, people are going to call him an amateur for it. But guess what? This amateur, with the support of people within the cabinet, mind you, there are other people. It's not just the president alone to advise him. He is doing all right for himself. Sure, he's made controversial decisions, but they are decisions with both a backing and a logic behind them.
I mean,
They are
nobody really talked about when Obama bypassed the Constitution.
I mean,
Nobody talked about when he created false propaganda and ended up killing innocent soldiers and citizens of those other countries that we were at war with. And it's just
I
like
mean, if you,
we finally have somebody who's actually looking out for Americans that are actual day to day living Americans. And it's like
yeah,
I don't know. For me,
and if you
I'm
want to
looking at
know why
for
people are
the
going to
middle
support
class.
Trump in the upcoming election, you
Who-
know,
Huh?
you need to look at a couple of things: lowest black unemployment rate,
Exactly.
highest job growth
Yup.
since Reagan,
Yup.
Reagan. Yep. Freaking
Again.
lowest inflation once again since Reagan. And Reaganomics in the 80s, when Reagan was alive, was a good time for the economic world. People were prospering, and the fact that people are seeing stuff like that again, I think that Trump and people who operate along the lines of Trump are going to be seeing massively increased support.
right. And there is
Idea
the
of
counter argument
working.
that I'm sorry, just to interject quickly, a counter argument comes up sometimes about that, where the economy takes years to actually develop based on a presidential influence, and so people are trying to blame Obama for the economic growth that we're experiencing here. But I would want to argue that no, it's not quite like that.
Agreed.
That Trump is
Agreed.
bringing, because the issue to take with that is it seems nice on paper, but when you add in the fact that our stock markets and just the growth of not just jobs and just the descent of employment, but also all sorts of different like plethora of aspects, like the what's it real estate. Real estate's another one, and you have exports, just any number of industries, they're all growing, but they grow very fast. They turn on a dime. You can do it as soon as quarterly rates, every quarter, every season almost. You can analyze like a significant change within all these industries. And so, no, it's not going to take two presidential terms for growth to be seen. It doesn't work like that. This is Trump. This is not Obama. I just wanted to throw that out there to kind of debunk the idea that economic growth takes a while. Therefore, we can't attribute this improvement to Trump, but we can and we should.
I agree. Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah,
Absolutely agreed.
I mean,
That's one of my main things with giving props to Trump, just because like one of the main points that we had for Obama was that like Obama was supposedly looking out for the black man, and it was just like even back in the day with like Jim Crow laws and stuff, like people were growing their own businesses and their own economic place in the world and going up and up. And then when the civil rights movement and Obama and everything just kind of came to a head, all of a sudden black people were stagnant, and it's just like why of all times when we all of a sudden have this supposedly amazing black dude looking out for black people, are black people suffering in this economy, and then all of a sudden this white dude comes in, and it's just like all of a sudden it's apparent to so many people, not just me but a ton of other black people who don't even have to be conservative, that under this presidential under this commander, like our economic growth has been better than it's been in years, even before Obama. And people today want to give certain things, credit for for being from Obama and everything, and people want to talk about like what is it, the OHS?
yeah,
People want to talk about Obama did that, Obama did this, and it's just like that was from before Obama. Like Obama didn't bring anything to the table. It's like all this stuff like that's happening today is because of Trump, and I'm very, very proud of my president. I'm not afraid to say it. Like that's just how it is.
Right, and you should not be afraid to wear the one or two MAGA hat that you bought. You know what I mean? It's all
You know what it is.
yeah, again, like celebrate what you believe in. Especially, I mean, the only time not to celebrate what you believe in is when you are directly trying to cause harm to people. But of course, that's not
Yeah.
happening. But celebrate what you believe. Like, if there's any sort of overall thematic thing to take away from this, it's this central point. We have different beliefs. We have to understand that others will perceive things in a different way, but that does not mean prejudice. We have to celebrate what we believe in, but we must also understand that with that comes a responsibility of moderation. We
Oh, of
have
course,
to,
of
yeah, a
course.
responsibility of moderation to bring, like the ISIS brides. We have to understand that, or not we, they have to understand that if they were to be given the grace to be re-assimilated into Western culture, they do so by acknowledging the fact that their ideals only go so far, and that when they're going into our ballpark, so to speak, they have to stay with us. To go back to the Vic Monianga thing, even though, yes, if there were extreme circumstances behind the photo, there weren't. We have to be moderate with our own views and understand that not everything is grounds for hate and not everything is grounds for prejudice. And self-righteousness is a very, very slippery slope. And then now with this latest topic that we're talking about and the presidential elections, sure, people are going to want to go against Trump, but we have to understand once again that his ideals, for better or for worse, do have a solid basis. We don't need to irrationally hate him for these things. We don't need to beat people with MAGA hats. It's just an idea. It's just a perspective on the world. And so moderation, not just in our views, but moderation in our actions based on our views.
I mean,
Okay,
I'm just
there.
saying, like,
Overall,
if I'm wearing my MAGA hat, let me just say chime in real quick. Like, if I'm wearing my MAGA hat, somebody tries to touch me so much as touch me, somebody's getting capped. I do not give a fuck. I will no. I'm not
well,
gonna.
defend
I'm not
yourself,
about to get
right? I
assaulted.
mean, it's as simple as that.
I'm not about to get assaulted. You got me fucked up if you think you can touch me.
Anyway, so Trigger Weasel, do you think that about sums up the fireplace chat today?
Yeah, I'd say that about sums up everything. Looking
Well,
forward to talking with you guys next week about whatever happens. So much stuff happened this week that whatever happens next week has got to be juicy.
I can't wait to see the actual like Jussie Smollett how that unfolds in the very end. Like I wanna talk about his sentencing and everything.
ooh, a
After
preview, I
that.
see.
Ooh, a
Didn't he
preview.
turn himself in?
Yeah. And
And
then
they're
that's
figuring
the
out his.
funniest shit. He turned himself in and he's still sticking to his guns about being innocent. I think that's the funniest shit.
Oh, right. Anyway, let's save that for next week because again, this fireside chat was so fraught with juicy details and just juicy topics. We've got to set an upward precedent, right,
Juicy.
guys?
Yeah, no kidding. All right then.
Juicy.
See y'all next week
This was
and
the
take care.
fireplace.
Yeah, see ya.
Bye. Oh, my back.